Assalamualaikum. I am Widi Mutakin from Expose Academy. In this video, we will learn how to create a simple vector logo in Krita, then export the logo in SVG format. We are going to create a logo or an icon that looks like the Linux Red Hat logo, but of course with some differences. We'll make the hat shape simpler, and we will also add a fire element behind the hat. Before we start, for those of you who are just starting out learning graphics, there are three important things that I need to convey. The first is about Krita. Krita is free and open source software that you can download from krita.org. At the core, Krita is actually a raster-based digital painting software, not a vector software. So, it wouldn't be fair to compare Krita's vector features with special vector software such as Adobe Illustrator or Inkscape, etc. But even though it is not as complete as a vector software, for creating simple SVG vector graphics such as logos or icons, Krita is more than capable. The second thing that I need to mention is how vectors are rendered in Krita. Like other raster software that provides vector features, for example Photoshop, GIMP, Clip Studio Paint, and so on, vectors in Krita will be rendered or displayed as if they are raster. So, if we zoom in too close, the image will appear pixelated. But don't worry, the original vector data is independent of the image resolution. So, if you export the image into a vector format such as SVG, the resulting vector image will not be pixelated if you later zoom in or scale it. Then, the last thing I need to mention is about the SVG format. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It is a vector format with open standards, unlike other vector formats which are generally proprietary. This is the reason why many people choose this file format to transfer vector data from one software to another, or use it for icons and logos on websites. Let's start by creating a new document. Make the width 1000 pixels. Press Tab and make the height 1000 pixels also. For the resolution, we can set it to 300 ppi. Please note that the quality of vector graphics is not bound by the size or the resolution of the image, meaning that you may freely scale vector graphics without worrying about damaging them. However, these document parameters will determine the default state when later you view the SVG file in a browser or other viewers. To make things easier later down the road, we should just use the common size of raster image that can fit nicely on our monitor, not too small and not too big either. For other parameters, just leave everything the defaults. Then, for the content category, we will start with only a single layer, which is a white background layer. We will add more layers later gradually. Click the Create button to create the document. To create vector graphics in Krita, we need a special layer called the vector layer. For this, you can press the small arrow button next to the big plus button in the Layers Docker. Then choose the Add Vector Layer command. Or you can also use the shortcut Shift Insert. For vector object alignment, you can use the Arrange Docker. But in this tutorial, I want to show you another way of lining objects, which is using the grid feature. To use it, you can open a view menu, then click on the Show Grid checkbox. You can also use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-Quote. After that, to make vector objects and their elements snap to the grid points, you also need to activate the Snap to Grid option. You can use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-semicolon to toggle this snapping feature. Alright, we can start by creating the hat. I want to use a light blue color slightly toward cyan. Then activate the ellipse tool. For the fill parameter, we can set it to foreground color. This is so that later the fill area uses the cyan color we chose earlier. Then, for the outline parameter, we can just set it to no outline. Next, click drag on the canvas, like this, to create the top part of the head. Then, use the Select Shapes tool and select the object. We can duplicate this object by pressing Ctrl C and then Ctrl V. Drag this new object so that it is directly under the first one. Position it roughly like so. As you can see, the grid and the snap features make it a lot easier to position the objects. Next, we want to create a rectangle that connects the ends of the ellipses. Activate the rectangle tool. Then create a rectangle by click dragging from the left point to the right point at the ends of the ellipse. Then reactivate the Select Shapes tool. You need to know that I am using a custom shortcut letter A on my keyboard for the Select Shapes tool and the letter S for the Edit Shape tool. So don't be confused if later you see one of these tools activated without me touching the tool icons. This is because I pressed the custom shortcuts. Alright, with the Select Shapes tool, we can select this ellipse shape. Then we change the color to be a bit lighter. Right-click and then select Bring to Front. Next, we can select this shape. Hold Shift and select this one as well. Right-click, then select a logical operation called Unite. Essentially, the Unite operation will combine the selected shapes into one new shape. Then press Ctrl C and Ctrl V again to duplicate the shape. Reposition it so that it is horizontally centered on the other shape, but make it a bit lower. Right-click and use the Send to Back command. Then change the color to a much darker version, close to black. We want to make this area look like a circular ornament. We can select this shape and then duplicate it. Position it at the center, but slightly downwards. Then use the Send to Back command. Next, select the top shape, duplicate again. Position it so it is at the center, approximately at this location. Then scale this shape while holding down Ctrl and Shift. After that, use the Send to Back command. Then we can press Ctrl Shift Code to hide the grid, and then press Ctrl Shift semicolon to disable the grid snapping feature. Next, create a rectangular selection by click dragging from right to left. Make sure all the shapes that make up the head are selected. Then right-click, then choose Group. While in the grouped condition, we can easily rotate all of them at once using the Select Shapes tool. Alright, before continuing, just as a reminder, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. Now, we are going to create the fire. To make the process a lot easier, we should create it on a separate layer. Create a new vector layer by pressing Shift Insert, then click on this down arrow button so that the layer is below the head layer. To create a free shape with lots of curves, the most suitable tool for this is the Bezier Curve tool. For now, set the fill parameter to not filled, and for the outline parameter, use the brush option. In this condition, this tool will use the brush settings that are currently active. To make the vector lines thin, you can set the brush size parameter to 5 pixels. And let's use black first so that it will be easier to distinguish the line from the head shapes. Then we can create the flame shape with this tool. If you ever used the pen tool in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator before, inshallah, you will be able to use this tool right away. But if you haven't used this tool or any vector tools before, then I suggest you find additional references about this tool. This video is too short to cover everything in detail. If you are serious about learning Krita, you can join my online courses on Udemy or on Skillshare. In the intermediate level course, I cover how to use the Bezier Curve tool step by step and in detail, from basic to advanced. You will learn how to create illustrations by combining vector and raster features. If you are still not satisfied with the shape, you can activate the Edit Shapes tool. I usually just press the letter S on a keyboard as the custom shortcut. You can do it manually by pressing this tool icon. Basically, with the Edit Shapes tool, we can access a vector points, handles, and also segments of a vector object to further customize the shape. I just speed up the video now to save time. To fill the three shapes using the same color, we can first combine them all into a compound shape. To do this, first, we need to select them. Right-click and choose a logical operation called Unite. After all the shapes are considered as one object, we can set the color at once easily. For the stroke color, we can choose No Stroke Color. And for the fill color, you may just use a solid color if you prefer a flat style. But for now, I want to use a gradient. It will be too long to discuss the gradient settings in this video. So let's just use a gradient preset that is already provided by Krita. Find the one that looks like fire. This actually already looks good without the need for us to tweak it again. However, if you still want to adjust the orientation or the distribution of the colors, you can drag the yellow control points. Just tweak them until you are happy with the gradient condition. After you are done, you can select the vector head objects in the Vector Layer 1 layer. Then press Ctrl X to cut them. Select the vector layer below it. Then press Ctrl V to paste. Until now, you may be wondering, why do we need to merge everything into one layer? Wouldn't it be easier to manage if they stay separated in their own layer? The answer is that in Krita, the export function to SVG file format can only be done per layer. At least, that is how it is in the Krita version that I used when recording this video. So, like it or not, we need to place everything inside a single layer. We can remove the vector layer above as we don't need it anymore. Next, we can select all these vector objects, then combine them as one group object. This is so it is easier if we want to scale them or perform other types of transformation. You can hold down Shift while scaling to perform a uniform scale. In other words, the width to height ratio remains the same. After that, make sure the vector layer we want to export is active. Then, open the Layers menu. Choose the Import Export submenu. Then choose this command called the Save Vector Layer as SVG. You can specify any name you like for the SVG file. I'll just name this Firehead Logo. Next, we can test the condition of the file by opening it in an internet browser. I am currently using Microsoft Edge. If we zoom in, that is by holding down Ctrl and turning the scroll wheel. As you can see, because this logo is a vector image, it will not be pixelated. You may also import and use SVG files in almost all graphics software in the world nowadays. If you are interested in learning computer graphics further, you can visit my website exposeacademy.com. Apart from Krita, I also provide courses on Blender 3D, 3ds Max, Photoshop, Illustrator, SketchUp, and so on. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future tutorials. Please share this video and give a thumbs up if you like it. If you want to request a tutorial about Krita, just write in the comments what topic you want me to cover. I hope this video is useful. Wassalamualaikum.